Now, the One Piece adaptation by Netflix has just released. It's out, all the episodes. And like some fans feared, there were some changes in the show compared to the manga and to the anime. Like, it was something that we saw coming from the trailers. There were some minor changes, such as certain things that were supposed to happen but happened differently. Certain, supporting characters that they cut off, due to budget and all. And there were some major changes where some, notable people or villains that were supposed to appear also weren't there. So these are the changes, minor and major, Netflix's One Piece versus the manga / anime, and we'll be going through all the arcs in order. We are starting off with the Romance Dawn arc, and just right off, the changes to the anime is felt when the story starts off in a non-linear fashion, starting off with Luffy trying to go and assemble his crew and intertwining his flashback scenes. These are just minor changes that affects nothing at all, but we start to see more of that change when it reaches Shell's town and finally meets ZORO, Captain Morgan, and Helmeppo. And here are all the major changes in this arc. Starting off, we have Vice Admiral Garp, who was introduced very early in the show in the opening during Gold Roger's execution, which wasn't so in the anime. Now, another major change in the live action version is that major players, or should I say major characters, are revealed right away. Of course, this happens in the manga and anime, but it is not revealed in the first episode like the live action version. Roger's execution is revisited a couple of times in the manga and anime, and that's where these characters are revealed. But in this live action, we see them right away. There's young MIHAWK, we see Smoker too, there's Monkey D. Dragon, and there's also young Shanks, which also they have made a change in this adaptation, because in the anime he's much younger than in this live action version, which means that in the present day he's much older than in the anime too. Another major change in the live action version is how our Straw Hats, our main characters, are introduced. With Luffy, it's almost the same as the manga / anime, but one major difference is that the villagers see him off as he sets off to his own adventure, and he encounters the sea monster that took Shanks' arm. That has been 10 years and he's been prepared, trained, and accustomed with his own powers, and it was a satisfying moment when he punched it in the face. And he encounters a whirlpool after that, and that is when he got in the barrel and his boat started to sink. When it comes to ZORO, he's introduced early in the live action version at Kuina's grave, unlike the manga / anime where we meet him at the yard where he's hanged out to dry. And ZORO's fight with Mr. 7, the live action version, is not shown in the manga / anime but only referenced much later on. And with Nami, she wasn't even in the Romance Dawn arc in the manga / anime. It was after that arc that we are introduced to her character. And speaking of her character, she knows how to fight right away, which is something that we don't see until much later on in the manga / anime, where she learns and even gets her stuff. Another minor or major change is to Kobe's character in the live action version, which he plays a more prominent role, or should I say has more to do in the Netflix show, and gets reunited with Luffy 2 times by the ending of the show, unlike the manga, which was in over 400 chapters, and in the anime after about 200 episodes later. Now, continuing with the changes in the Romance Dawn arc, the criminal organization known as the Baroque Works is introduced in the first episode of this live action adaptation rather than it occurring in the 100th chapter of the manga. An organization that will probably be introduced to in season 2 with its own great arc, and where we'll get to meet another member of our Straw Hat crew. Now, in the Netflix show, Luffy, Nami, and ZORO are all in the same bar, where they may have been aware of each other, but of course they didn't know each other then. And plus, all eyes was on ZORO when he was dealing with Helmeppo and all that situation. But how Luffy and ZORO officially meet is still the same. But Nami was never part of this arc, as I said previously. Now, Luffy doesn't free him right there and then. It is after his shenanigans when he's trying to escape. That is when he frees ZORO, and that is even with the help of Kobe. And that whole scene took place in that climatic battle that we saw in the ending of episode 1 of the show. Plus, Luffy was the one who actually gets ZORO's swords for him. Now, in the show, a young girl gives ZORO a chocolate flavored rice ball in a bar instead of the prison yard, which had much more emotions to it with the story and how he was captured and all. And one major change that many fans I know will find issue with is ZORO hating, or hate is a strong word, but just finding displeasure in Luffy naming his signature moves, which goes against his character in the manga, in the anime. He himself names his moves, and it's one of the best parts of any anime and in the One Piece, in their signature moves and how they execute them. But in here, in this show, you are not gonna get this. Maybe in season 2 after spending some time with Luffy and the crew. Now another big change is the Straw Hats stealing the Grand Line map from Captain Morgan instead of Buggy the Clown. Now as I said before, they introduced Vice Admiral Garp very early in the show, appearing in the opening of the show, being the one to actually have caught Gold Roger, and also appearing at the end of the episode, which wasn't so in the source material. In the manga, he appeared in the cover chapter 92 and then made his first appearance in chapter 431, and in the anime he appeared in episode 68. And spoilers, he's the grandfather of Luffy, so they are really starting off things early with introducing certain characters, and it kind of makes sense a little since, you know, the whole show itself is covering to, I think, chapter 98. So yeah, these are some of the minor and major changes of the Romance Dawn arc. The next one is the Orange Town arc. This covers the newly dysfunctional team being captured by pirates and sent to Orange Town, and this is where we are introduced to Buggy. The anime actually took 5 episodes to get to this point, but in this we get it in the first 2 episodes. And the fight that we get between, you know, the Straw Hats and Buggy, it just occurs in the tent rather than the entire town. Buggy's first mate Moji and the local dog Choo Choo play a large part in the story, in the manga, and even in the anime, but in the Netflix show they are barely in it, making a few seconds of cameo. The same goes for Buggy's second mate, Kabaji, and even the Orange Town mayor also have their roles in the story heavily reduced. Buggy steals the Grand Line map from the Straw Hats, but they manage to steal it back, which I talked about in the Romance Dawn arc about how they heavily changed it, because in the manga and anime, the Straw Hats actually steal the map from Buggy. Now fans already know the brief betrayal of Nami in the early part of One Piece, which they never alluded to until it hit fans, but in the show, they actually just hinted it at the end of the second episode. Now let's move on to the All Syrup Village arc, which is where the Straw Hats get their first real ship. Very memorable part of the story and the character's journey, as they also meet one of their future longest serving crewmate, Usopp, after helping save Lady Kaya from her butler. Now all the fight scenes and sequences that, you know, were really big and bombastic and just out there in the anime especially, have been scaled down in the first episodes and arc, and there's no exception for this arc as well. Plus some of the biggest changes occur in the first 2 episodes, with some of the supporting characters being changed, their roles, and even removed entirely. Now in the show, Lady Kaya's illness is due to a butler poisoning her slowly, but in the anime and manga, it's as a result of her grieving her parents' death. Her financial advisor in the show is Mary instead of another butler, which was in the manga and anime, and he gets killed off instead of just being wounded in the manga/anime. Now, as I said before, this is the arc where they meet one of their friends and long-serving crewmate, Usopp, and in the manga/anime, before he joins the Straw Hats, he had his own pirates team, his own group. Those 3 boys are entirely cut from the show. Now the fight between the Straw Hats and Captain Kuro takes place in Lady Kaya's mansion instead of the beach, which was a freaking incredible scene when it first aired. Sexy. And some of the Black Cat pirates were also removed from the story entirely, like Captain Kuro's first mate Django. Charm and Bucci are the only Black Cat pirates that made an appearance. Now another change, or should I say step up, that they did for Usopp and Kaya's relationship was that kiss that they both had, which in the anime they didn't have. You know how anime is, unless it's, you know, Aki or that type of genre, you're not gonna get this type of, you know, display of affection. Now, I already talked about Vice Admiral Garp. By the end of episode 4, he's still in pursuit of Luffy, and at this point is where they reveal that he's actually Luffy's grandfather, which in the manga happens after hundreds of chapters, like really far in the manga, and in the anime, in episode 314, like, yeah, but in the show, they just reveal it at the end of episode 4. Now, the next arc is Baratie. This is where we meet another great crewmate, long-serving Sanji, the Straw Hats cook, and Van Damme's nephew. In the show, Luffy is made to help out in the restaurant as a chore boy because he couldn't pay for his food. But in the manga, he actually destroys the place when they first got there, and so he has to pay for the damages. Thus, he works there to pay up. Now, one of the memorable parts of this arc is Don Krieg and his entire crew, the battle against them, but it's entirely removed from this show. Now, instead of Don Krieg actually being part of Sanji's arc, being the villain of that arc before being recruited by Luffy to join the Straw Hats, the show actually changes it to him actually fighting MIHAWK in episode 5, which never happened in the manga/anime. Another major change to the show is that they made Arlong the primarily, antagonist for this part of the show instead of it being Don Krieg, and as such, erases Draco MIHAWK's pursuit of Don Krieg and instead replaces it with him actually hunting Luffy at the request of Vice Admiral Garp. Now, the last thing in this arc is that the two bounty hunters, Johnny and Yosaku, who actually teamed up with ZORO in the past, were also cut entirely from the show. Now let's move on to the final arc that ended season 1 of this Netflix adaptation, and that is the Arlong Park arc. This covers the final 2 episodes of the show, and this is when the Straw Hats are on a mission to rescue Nami after she seemingly betrayed them. This is one of the best parts of the manga and anime, and in my opinion, where Nami fully, wholeheartedly joined the Straw Hat crew. And this is where we also get to see a backstory. Now, one of the biggest changes in this show is Arlong's motivation and the reason why he hates humans and why he does what he does and is who he is. In the early parts of the manga, at this point, we just find out that it's because humans are physically weaker than them. That's why he just hates them. But in the show, his hatred comes from his people, the fishmen, being actually enslaved by humans in the past, which actually gives more depth to the character. Though this was actually also revealed in the manga, but at a much later date. But in the show, just right away, they actually make you feel something for him as a character. Now, 2 notable members from this arc, one from Arlong's crew and the other is a sea beast, the first sea beast that the Straw Hats encountered, actually cut from the show: Haki, the octopus fishman, and Momu, the giant sea cow. Another significant change to the show was in episode 3 when Arlong captured Buggy and took him to Baratie, and that is where it was revealed that he actually put one of his ears inside Luffy's hat, and that was how Arlong was able to find their location, which didn't happen in the manga/anime. In that, Buggy actually recovers a few parts of his body just like the show after his fight with Luffy, and then goes on his own journey before meeting Alvina, which brings me to this change also. They did not show the island of rare animals. It was a very famous One Piece location from East Blue, which does not appear this season. Though it's famous in One Piece, it only appears about twice in the source material. And during this part of the short story, you can call it filler. Perhaps that's why they did not show it in this live action version. And that is Buggy going on his own solo adventure with a few body parts that he has left. Now, in the show, Nami actually working for the bad guys made, the Cocoa Towns people think that she actually betrayed them. They were unaware of her attempt to actually, purchase their freedom from Arlong, which in the anime, all the villagers knew. They supported her, her sister knew, and they even tried to, go and fight Arlong for her. And that is when we got that scene where she was, cursing Arlong and cutting her arm. Vice Admiral Garp also arrives at Cocoa Village after Arlong is defeated by Luffy, and we then get a fight between those two, but at the end, Vice Admiral Garp actually lets them go. This moment actually in the manga happens like hundreds and hundreds of chapters in, and in the anime it happens in, I think, the 480th episode. These are all the minor and big changes that occurred in the show, comparing it to the anime and manga. Some of the changes really should not have been made, and others is understandable, and some actually develop the characters even more. So do let me know in the comments below what you thought of all these changes, and which camp are you? Are you actually okay with the changes, or are you indifferent, or 50-50, caring about certain changes and actually not minding others? And what do you think of the entire season, or the episodes that you have currently watched too? If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. It really helps the channel out. Subscribe and turn on that post notification bell not to miss any new uploads. As always, Nerdy Sage here. See you guys in the next one.